Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanutamisha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurtushe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namaste Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Fullaravindayata Patra Nitre Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Rajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Putra Vitraika Paniye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gita Amrita Duhe Namaha. We are studying chapter 15 of Bhagavad-gita as it is. Yesterday we discussed up to verse number 9, and the verse was talking about the struggle of the living entity in material world. How does the living entity continuously struggles with one's own body and mind? So in the section today, we'll come to know in verse 10 and 11 that though the living entity struggles like this, like one of you yesterday asked, what is that struggle? So some of the living entities are able to see that struggle and some are not able to see that struggle. Everyone is struggling, but then some are able to perceive it. Who is able to perceive it? One who is able to see the difference between body and soul can perceive that struggle. But one who does not see the soul and only sees the body, that person cannot perceive the struggle. For that person, this is natural. But for someone who is confined, who feels I am confined, because that person knows I am spirit soul, that person will see the struggle. That person will be able to see it as a struggle. So that is explained in these verses. Who cannot see and who can see. Verse number 10 talks about who cannot see. And verse number 11 talks about who can see. Verse number 10. Utkramantam sthitam vapi punjanam vagunanvitam vimudha nanupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Jnana chakshushaha. One who sees with the eyes of knowledge can see that. But one who does not have those eyes cannot see that how the living entity is going from one body to another body. Cannot see. Srila Prabhupada writes here, persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from body and it's changing its body and enjoying in different ways. Next verse. Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyanti atmavastitam yatanto api akritatmano nainam pashyanti achetasaha. Now who is able to see yatanto yoginaschainam? A yogi who is endeavoring, who is engaged in putting efforts. Yatantaha. Yatantaha yoginaschainam. One yogi who is putting efforts to make spiritual progress, that person can see. Pashyanti atmani avastitam. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. They cannot see. So an endeavoring transcendentalist or yogi can see that, yes, my body is changing. Am I becoming more spiritual in nature, or am I becoming more materialistic in nature? A yogi can see that. An endeavoring yogi can see that. Because he or she knows the science of seeing the change. But a conditioned soul who is totally in bodily consciousness cannot see that. For that person, it is so natural that the body is growing, it is becoming old, and one day one will die. It's very natural. It's okay. It is acceptable. It's part of life. This is the difference. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purpose that there are different kinds of transcendentalists on the path of spiritual realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yogina is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are so many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called association of yogis, but they're actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They're simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatanto api akritatmanaha. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord. In other words, the Bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. Those who engage in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Why there is a need to add these three words? Why not just say those engaged in pure devotional service? Why add the three words in Krishna consciousness? Why not just say those engaged in pure devotional service? What is the need to add in Krishna consciousness? Paramita Mataji. Yes, you can unmute now, please.
To become more focused so that we can concentrate on Krishna only. Otherwise, we may be deviated in so many demigods and we won't be able to find out that where to concentrate.
Pure devotional service means cannot be demigods. It is already mentioned, pure devotional service. So when you say pure devotional service, automatically there is no point of demigod worship there. Right, because it's already mentioned, pure devotional service. Pure means pure. Pure means no mixture, which means no demigod worship. So why in Krishna consciousness?
So that we can accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord and we can focus only into Him.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Bhakti Mataji?
Prabhuji, could it be related to the impersonalist or realization of the Brahman
Impersonalists can never be engaged in pure devotional service.
Devotional service? Yeah.
It is mixed devotional service. Because the definition, the shloka of devotional service, pure devotional service, defining verse is Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavitam Anukulyena Krishna Nushilanam Bhaktiruttama. So it always says Anya Vilashita Shunyam. There's no other desire. That's called pure devotional service. So there's no point of jnana coming there, karma coming there. So no demigod worship, no impersonalism. Neha Mataji.
Because Krishna is our source. Once we know our source.
Okay, thank you. Amrita Vilasini Mataji.
Maybe we only
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, it means that you, the devotee need to totally surrender to Krishna, to accept Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Sureka Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Sadha Pranam. Prabhuji, because the consciousness can be pure only in Krishna consciousness, and in Krishna consciousness only, the bhakta can be engaged in devotional services.
Alright, Mataji. Achidan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, while performing the pure devotional service, our mind should always be Krishna conscious, and that consciousness should be always thinking about Krishna, about his pastimes and everything. So, in this way, we can perform the pure devotional service.
All right, thank you, Prabhu. Yes, that's the answer. While engaging in activities of pure devotional service, one should always think of Krishna. That's why it is pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That's what Krishna has been telling Arjuna, right? Chapter 8, verse number 7. What did he say there? What did he say? Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Fight thinking of me. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. So engage in devotional service, pure devotional service, while thinking of Krishna as the master and oneself as the servant. And that's why in Krishna consciousness, being conscious of whom? Of Krishna, and also of one's position as servants of Krishna, and engage in pure devotional service. Then that person can understand things how they are. Like today morning, I was giving class in the temple on Srimad Bhagavatam. So I mentioned this point. There's so many spiritual speakers these days who tell you, control your mind, control your senses, eat less, sleep less, have a sattvic life, don't eat non-vegetarian food, focus, concentrate. All these principles are told by them. But what is the goal of all of that? Why do all these things? So that you can become a successful person, so that you can become more prosperous, so that you can win over others, so that you can have a better edge, so that you are smart, you are productive, you are efficient, so that your mind is peaceful, so that you are a happy person. But does anyone say, okay, do all these things, control your mind, control your senses, eat less, sleep less, have more focus, more concentration, because it will help you to become a better devotee of Krishna? No. They don't say that. They just say, do this. So if that element of pleasing Krishna is not present, will it be called bhakti? No, it will not be called bhakti. It may look like spirituality, but then it is not devotional service in Krishna consciousness. There's no bhakti factor there. And Srila Prabhupada, he makes this very clear. Do all these things for what? For pleasing Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. That kind of a yogi can see, yes, the body is changing, but I'm eternal soul, I don't change. That person can see, can have the vision. Next verse. Now then Lord Krishna talks about the different ways he maintains us. 4 verses, 12, 13, 14, 15. Krishna as the maintainer. Why Krishna mentions that here? Because though we are struggling in the material world, Krishna is always helping us. He has not left us alone. Okay, now you have done the wrong thing, so I kick you out of my home and then I allow you to rot there in the nasty material world. No, he doesn't have that kind of mentality. Fine, you have done something wrong. You want to experience material life. Okay, all right, you go there. But I'm not leaving you alone. I'm also there to help you, assist you in so many ways. So Krishna maintains, and he maintains and helps in both the ways. He helps us to enjoy material life and live a happy material life. And he also will help us to get out of material life if we want. He will help us to live in this material world nicely. And when we'll say, okay, now I want to get out of this material world, go back to spiritual world, Krishna will say, fine, I'll help in that as well. So what always he helps? At cosmic level and at personal level, he offers helps. At cosmic level, he helps in the form of sun, moon, fire. In the personal level, he helps as the digestion fire in the stomach, as super soul in the heart. In so many ways he helps. Like for example, the sun. I don't know if you are aware of this. Actually, sun gives us life. Prana Shakti, which we have, that comes from sun. Anyone who does not have good health, if that person worships sun god, Surya Devata, that person will have good health because sun gives good health. Anyone is sick, that person should sit in the sunlight for some time because sun rays, they energize our body. They give us life. Prana is there in the sunlight. So one should take the sun. Which sun? The morning rising sun. One should have it. And scriptures say, Ayurveda says, any part of the body which is not functioning properly, let's say you have a back ache, you have a knee ache, you have a headache, you should expose that part of the body for some time to the morning rising sun. And you'll see that the pain is gone. So the sun rises, and as the sun rises, it removes darkness. As it removes darkness, it removes lethargy. It provides one energy, and this helps the jiva to engage in different activities, karma. So the sun helps. Now, when the sun sets, the moon rises. Why the moon rises when there is night? Because night is the time to sleep. And the moon brings a cooling sensation in the atmosphere. So when the moon rises, a person can have a very peaceful, satisfying sleep. It reduces heat, it reduces pain in the body, it gives nourishment to the different medicines and herbs. So in that way, Lord Krishna helps. Many other ways he helps. So that's why this saying is there, it's given in Bible. Count the many blessings and name them one by one. It shall surprise you what God has done. So many things Krishna does to help us. Right? Now let's look at the verses 15.12. Yat adityagatam tejo jagad bhasayate khilam yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo vidhimamakam. The splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. It's coming from Krishna. We'll read this first paragraph. Let's read. Ratnangi Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving here with the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole solar system. There are different universes and solar systems, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in such each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in Bhagavad-gita 10.21, the moon is one of the stars, Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme, Prabhu, can you make it a little up? Yeah. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then once Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul.
Thank you. Next verse. Gama vishya cha bhutani dharayami aham ojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarvaha somo bhutva rasatmakaha. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. The earth gets its quality of firmness because of Krishna. Otherwise, earth is loose. Dust is loose. What puts all the dust particles together? It is Krishna. And because of that, we can have a building, a structure, a floor, anything, the planet. So that's mentioned here. Kam avishyacha bhutani. Sripad explains that in the purport. Rupanshi Mataji, can you read?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planet, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like the straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
His energy is sustaining each planet just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets which are floating in the air are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word Rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayuktaha Vachami Annam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of food stuff. So not just Krishna gives us food and adds taste to the food, but he also helps us to experience that taste by giving us those taste buds and also acting as the digestion fire in the stomach. He allows us to digest that food. So he helps from outside, he helps from inside. He helps in all the different ways. We'll read the purport here, Pankaj Shobin.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Dandavat Pranam. Purport. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all foods and there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometime when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantra, Brad Aranyaka Upanishad 5.9.1 also confirms that the Supreme Lord or Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of food stuff. I am Agnir Vaishvanaro Ya Yoyam Antha Purushe Yenidam Annam Pashyate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of food stuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests food stuff, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Sabdadibhyo nataha pratisthana cha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of food stuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is digesting force for all of them. Hare Krishna.
Yes, he helps in digestion, which gives nourishment to our body. So there are four kinds of foodstuffs Srila Prabhupada mentioned: chewed, sipped, licked, and sucked. So examples are also here just for our information knowledge. Chewed, let's say bread, chapati, chickpeas, these are chewed. Then sipped, like soup and porridge. Licked, like honey or sweet rice, thick sweet rice, raw sugar. And sucked, like ripe mango and sugar cane. So he helps in digesting all these different kinds of foodstuffs. Now that was for material life. He will help us in our material life. Now someone wants to come out of it, get liberation. So Krishna mentions in the next verse, I help in that also. I help to do that as well. So that verse is very famous, 15.15. Lord helps in all the many ways. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedaishta sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishtaha. I am living in the hearts of all. Avishtaha means entered. Mata smritir, from me comes memory. Jnanam, knowledge. Apohanam cha, forgetfulness. Vedaischa sarver ahameva vedyaha. Of all the Vedas, the goal is to know me. Vedanta Krit, I have compiled Vedanta. Vedavid, I know the Vedas. Eva chaham. As Badarayana or as Vyasadeva, Lord Krishna compiled Vedanta Sutra. That Vedanta Sutra is the culmination of all Vedic knowledge. And because he has compiled it, he knows it best. So he has explained that Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So one who studies these books can know the goal of all Vedas is to know Krishna. And he gives the intelligence to digest all this knowledge. Just like Krishna gives the power to digest all food that we eat, Krishna also gives us the power to digest all the knowledge given in the Vedas. And in that way, he helps the living entity to get liberation, come out of this material life. He helps in that way also. Text 15. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Veda. We'll read this Prabhupada. 2 paragraphs are there, so 2 different devotees can read the paragraphs. First paragraph. Sonali Mataji, you please read the first paragraph.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation in the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad-gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good. God is all merciful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Next paragraph. Who's reading? David Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, your grace, please accept my humble obeisances. Ananta Prevasta Sastra Jnanam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body. By the beginning, his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So, not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he received the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedas knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedas knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. You shall salvel Vidyabhushana in all the Vedic. Please, can you go up? In all the Vedic literature, begin from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glory of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of the Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.14 confirms this in the following words. Tastu Samaviyayat, one can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality. Please, can you go up? Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different process, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the supreme goal. Who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the verses of the purpose of Vedas, the understanding of Vedas and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so before we go to the next section, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back after the break.
Hare
Krishna, welcome back. We have only 5 more verses to go. All else are done. So we have a lesson to learn. We are so badly dependent on the Lord that even to forget Him, we need His help. Independence from Him is, that's why, only an illusion. Because to even forget God or forget anything, we need God's help. Next section, summary of Vedanta Sutra. So as already explained, the Lord in His incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. So only in 3 verses, which is verse number 16, 17, and 18, Krishna talks about the summary of the entire Vedanta. That's why this chapter is considered one of the best chapters of Bhagavad-gita, because in just 3 verses, one is getting all the knowledge one gets by studying the entire Vedanta Sutra. So which are these 3 verses? They are not very difficult to understand. Very simply, it's mentioned in Bhagavad-gita that what is the sar or the essence of the knowledge given in the Vedanta Sutra. Verse number 1st, which is 16th verse of this chapter. Dvav ima purushau loke sharashchakshara evacha sharah sarvani bhutani kutastokshara uchyate. 𝗹𝗲 purusho loke. In this world, there are two kinds of living entities. And what are they? Kshara, Akshara evacha. There are two kinds of living entities. Kshara means those who are fallible or conditioned souls. And Akshara means those who are infallible or liberated souls. An example can be seen in this picture. So on the left side, you see an example of conditioned souls. And on the right side, you see example of liberated souls. Here, liberated soul doesn't refer to Krishna and Srimati Radharani standing in the middle. It refers to the other gopis who are surrounding Radha and Krishna. They are Akshara, liberated souls. They don't fall, infallible. But on the other side, you see fallible souls or conditioned souls. So there are two kinds of living entities. That is the first thing to understand from Vedanta Sutra. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Next verse. Okay, let's read the first paragraph of this purport. Sureka Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Purport. As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving in summary the contents of Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities who are innumerable can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallibles. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in connect with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit word given here, Kshaya Sarvani Bhutani, means that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness doesn't mean that they have no individuality, but that is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained.
Thank you, Mataji. Next verse. Uttamaha purushastvanya paramatmeti udahita yo lokatrayamavishya vibharti avyaya ishvaraha. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So besides these two living entities, there is another one, but He is the greatest living entity. And He is known as Paramatma. And He's maintaining the material world by entering them. So this is the second information or most important knowledge coming from Vedanta Sutra. We'll quickly go to the next verse. Yasma sharamatitoham aksharada pichottamaha atosmi loke vedecha prathitaha purushottamaha. Because I am transcendental, now Krishna is talking about Himself, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Pratitaha Purushottamaha. I am the Supreme Most Lord. Now, these three verses, if someone understands, which means one understands the position of Krishna, the position of Paramatma, and the position of oneself, and the liberated souls in the spiritual world, one understands all the knowledge given in the Vedas. That's what these three verses conclude. We'll read this purport, the first paragraph. Achyuta Priya Kishori Mataji.
No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individual. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditional state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always a question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Next verse. Yo mamevam asammudo janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in pure devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. Something very similar to 10.8, where Lord Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavaha mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Same thing he's saying here. One who knows this engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. One who understands that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then the final verse. Iti guhyatamam shastram idamuktam maya naga etad buddhva buddhiman syat kritakrityascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. Iti guhyatamam shastram, O sinless one, and it is now disclosed by me to you. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So this is the conclusion of this chapter, that this is the most confidential part of all the Vedic scriptures, and anyone who understands this, krita krityascha bharata, whatever that person does, that person will attain success in that. Means that person will become fully successful in all endeavors, in all kinds of situations, whether it's material life or spiritual life. And more importantly, spiritual life. So we'll quickly read this purport. Then the chapter ends. We can take question and answers. Vidyabhushana Prabhu.
The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no questions of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. Thank you.
Thanks. Arjun Mataji, you can read.
Hare Krishna. The word anaga, by which Arjun is addressed, is significant. Anaga, or sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities, then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. While one is performing devotional service in association of the pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished together. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity to load it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the position of the matter. The problem of the material existence are due to these weakness of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weakness of the heart, and the rest of the chapter from 6th verse through the end discusses the Purushottam Yoga. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita in matter of Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of Supreme Person.
Thank you. Okay, any questions or comments? We can also take questions from yesterday, which was left. You can ask from yesterday's session. Yes, Sripad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, 2 references are given for this the root of this material tree. One by impersonalists, this is Brahman, and other by Bhakti Yogis, this is Brahmaloka, right?
No, it is not like that. See, the impersonalists, they see that the material world is seen by them as Brahman, because they see everything as Brahman. So instead of seeing that Padam, which means the spiritual cause of this as Krishna, they will see the spiritual cause of this material world as Brahman. The material world is coming from spiritual world. So our understanding is it is coming from Krishna. Krishna created the material world. But an impersonalist understanding is instead of Krishna as the creator, Brahman is the source of the material. That's the point, the ultimate source. Now after they accept Brahman as the source, or we accept Krishna as the source, then both they and we accept as Brahma as the first root.
Okay, fine. And Prabhuji, it is written in purport of first verse only. This material world as the manifestation of the center by 180 degree and the other 180 degree. But spiritual world is 3 times larger than the material world, no?
Srila Prabhupada is explaining their perspective, not our perspective here.
Yes.
That those who accept the material world as a reflection of spiritual world and they're impersonalists, their understanding is that is 180 degree and this is 180 degree.
Okay, half is
like you see a
upwards and half
circle,
is
like you see a circle, you know, upper hemisphere and lower hemisphere.
Yes.
So the upper hemisphere is spiritual world, the lower hemisphere is material world, something like that. So
and
he's explaining their viewpoint.
Yes. And Prabhuji, one we hear about a Virja Nadi. What is that then? Because I have heard that Virja Nadi is the separation of spiritual and material.
Viraja is also known as Karana Sagara. The Viraja Nadi is, so it's non-different from that Karana Sagara in which Lord Vishnu is reclining as Mahavishnu. That same is called Viraja. Same. That same water is called Viraja. Okay. All right. Usha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, little I'm confused in this verse 15.11, where we were just talking about pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Now, when we are referring to verse 8.7, there Lord Krishna told Arjuna that first you remember, Anusmara, first you remember me and then you fight, right? So here, don't you think that pure devotional service and in Krishna consciousness go together? Or we said that you do devotional service in pure Krishna consciousness. That means you should be remembering the activities, his pastimes while doing the devotional service. Or we
Pure
are
devotional
in
service.
Krishna consciousness and then we are doing the devotional service.
Pure devotional service is defined as activities which are free from karma and jnana. So those activities have to be done in a particular consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. That's why it's mentioned pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness.
But pure devotional service means bhakti yoga and it is in Krishna consciousness, you know.
That's your understanding. You know, you're assuming it means so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we are assuming. Like for example, if I say service, service means what? In Hindi, if you say service, it means seva.
Seva.
Then why add the word devotional? Then when you say seva, seva will be seva only. But when you add devotional to it, what does it mean then? Bhakti mai seva. Means seva done with devotion. Not all sevas are done with devotion. There can be seva done without devotion also. Right? Then you add the word pure to it. Now what does that mean? Okay, you can do devotional service with mixed intentions. So then there is pure devotional service, which means it does not have any mixed intentions, or it does not have mixture of karma and jnana. Okay, now the activity is pure. The activity does not have the contamination of karma and jnana. But only doing that activity is sufficient? No. Along with doing that activity, you have to do it in Krishna consciousness. Which means you have to be conscious of Krishna also. So then it makes the whole devotional service definition very clear. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Like to give you an example. Now, Kamsa was thinking of Krishna all the time, right? So he was Krishna conscious, but he was not rendering pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Right? So he was Krishna conscious, but he was not doing pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Understood? Similarly, one may do an activity of, let's say, chanting the names of Krishna, or building a temple for Krishna, or reading Bhagavad-gita. But one may do these pure activities which does not have any mixture of karma and jnana, but without being Krishna conscious.
Yes, yes.
Without the desire to please Krishna. So then again it will become incomplete. That's why the word is pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, understood, Prabhuji.
Okay, next question. What does it mean when it says that Krishna gives direction to the jiva to continue his work in his next life? The living entity, after he or she has given up the body, now next time when the living entity takes a new body, who will remind the living entity? What are you trying to do? What are your desires? What exactly you want to do or you wish to do in this body? All that remembrance comes from the super soul. The living entity cannot remember on his or her own. It's a Paramatma who helps. So as and when the living entity gets a new body or even a new day, it is the Supreme Lord who helps that living entity to recall, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you want to do. This is why you got this body. So now you pursue those activities. The point here is not that the Lord is responsible for our sinful activities. The point is that even to remember what we wanted to do, we need the help of the Lord. Whether it is right or wrong, we are so much dependent on Him. That's the point. So now, I don't know why this question is coming up again and again. Why the Lord is making us do wrong things. We have already discussed this so many times. It is not Krishna who is making us do wrong things. It's not Krishna or Super Soul is responsible for that. It is our tendency, our initiative. He is only helping. Like for example, you wanted to do something and you forget, and someone reminds you. So ultimately, it was whose desire to do it? My desire. The other person just reminded me. And why that person reminded me? Because that's what I want to do. So that person reminded me. That person helped me. That is the Lord's position as maintainer, to provide us our material needs. So if one wants to do spiritual activity, Krishna will also give help in that. He will also help in that. Now, if I am taking help for the wrong thing, for that I cannot blame Krishna. It's my problem. I am doing the wrong thing. And he's assisting in that. Assisting why? Because that's how the whole world will function. Anything you want to do, you need the assistance of the Supreme. So if it is in my karma and I have that desire, the Lord will make the arrangement. The material nature will make the arrangement. In 15.20, weakness of heart, can you please explain a little more regarding it? How do we do in daily life to come out of it? Weakness of heart. Weakness of heart. Okay, in the last paragraph, the first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. The second weakness of the heart is increase the propensity to lord over material nature. So in that way, it becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. So how to overcome these weaknesses of heart? So fine, I understood. This is what is taken from Madhurya Kadambani book, which is written by Srila Vishvanatha Chakravarti Thakur. And there are different weaknesses mentioned of a living entity, because of which the living entity goes through material life. So this weakness doesn't really mean that you have a weak heart, which is not pulsating at the right speed. This weakness of heart basically means not having a strong spiritual mind, having a materialistic mind. Because of having a materialistic mind, one is spiritually weak. One cannot practice the rules and regulations of spiritual life with determination. Why? Because the heart is materialistic in nature. So it is weak, spiritually speaking. It is weak. It cannot stick to the rules and regulations with great determination. And that's because of strong material identification. So that's called weakness, weakness of the heart, hridaya daurbalyam. And that can be solved by practicing spiritual life nicely. The heart can become strong, which means one can become more determined, one focused, one can strictly follow the rules and regulations. So the heart becomes weaker and weaker due to what? Due to regular and repeated sense gratification. The more the living entity engages in enjoying material things, the more the heart becomes spiritually weak, because the identification with matter increases. Identification with matter increases more and more. So then that person does not identify himself or herself as the spirit soul. So everything that person does will be for material body or material mind, because the mind is very weak spiritually. As we engage in sadhana bhakti, slowly we begin to get spiritual strength. Then for us, it's very easy to overcome the material needs, because we don't identify with the material body anymore. So the problem is material sense gratification. The solution is strong spiritual sadhana. It will help us to come out of material identification. We should know one thing. This is a very nice question which you asked. We cannot become self-realized just by having some little knowledge. We will become self-realized by going through the process of purification. The heart has to be purified. The heart is not pure now, it's unclean. And because of that, no matter how much we hear, we still identify with the body. I am this body. And these bodily needs are my needs. If the body is satisfied, I am satisfied. So how this mentality will change? Only by regularly, daily engaging in spiritual practices, devotional practices. Which are they? 4, basically. You live in association of devotees, you study the scriptures and hear the scriptures, you chant the holy names, and you honor Krishna Prasadam. These 4 things, when one does as sadhana, spiritual practice, then one goes stronger and stronger in spiritual life. So in Bhagavad-gita, we come to understand the importance of all these things. In the other books that we study in Bhakti Sastri, like 𝗪𝗶𝗹𝗹, we will know the practical of how to implement all these teachings in our life. What a devotee is supposed to do and what a devotee is not supposed to do. What things to be avoided, what things to be followed, so that you become spiritually strong. So 𝗪𝗶𝗹𝗪 talks in detail about all those things. Simple principles to be followed. Next question. Karana Sagar is the sweat of Lord Vishnu. Virja river is separation of Mahatattva and spiritual planets. Can you put some light on this? It's the same thing. It's not different. That river which separates material world, spiritual world, is the same as the ocean. It's not like a river separating 2 banks or 2 sides of the land. It's not like that. That analogy is given just to show to us that spiritual world is on this side, material world is on that side. Just like you have 2 banks of the river, one is there, one is here. So then you say the river is the border in between the 2 banks. On that side, on this side, the river is the border. So the example of Viraja river is given in that way. That Viraja is the tatastha position, the intermediate position, the border or marginal position. But basically that Viraja river is the same as Karana Sagar, the causal ocean, separating the material and the spiritual. The Karana Sagar separates the material and spiritual. From there, the material worlds come, and similarly does the Viraja river. So not much difference. Only the way of explaining it is a bit different. Okay, someone else has a question. David Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Your Grace, please accept my humble obeisances. Your Grace, I want to add this question. Why is Krishna created the demons? What are their purpose in this life?
Krishna did not create the demons because he wanted to create the demons. The demons are demons because of their attitude. Not that, okay, someone was labeled as a demon, now you are a demon, and forever you remain a demon. Any living entity who turns against the laws of God, he is called a demon, or she is called a demon, or demoniac in nature. Demon means what? One who disobeys. That's demoniac. Demigod means what? One who follows. So demons and demigods, they are not rubber stamped people that this is a demon. Basically, these are characteristics. These are mentality, thinking. Anyone who thinks like a demon is a demon, may look like a demigod.
Oh, okay.
So it's the personal nature, characteristic. We'll study this in the next chapter, the divine and the demoniac. So it doesn't mean that the demigods, they can never become demoniac in nature. Sometimes they also get demoniac feelings. They also behave in demonic manner. And sometimes we see people born in demoniac families, they also turn out to be very good people. Examples are there. Prahlad Maharaj was born in a demoniac family. Bali Maharaj was born in a demoniac family. But then they came to be exalted devotees of Krishna. Okay. Now, the word demon has different meanings. Of course, this is not the topic for today. In Sanskrit, there are different meanings. The words Danava, Daitya, Asura, Rakshasa, Yaksha, so many different Sanskrit terms. Now in English, very difficult to translate all of them. So translators other than Srila Prabhupada, they translated all of them as demons. Asura is also demon, Daitya is also demon, Danav is also demon, Rakshas is also different demon, but they are not same, they are different. So when we say demon, actually demon means, Sanskrit word for demon is Asura. And the word Asura means one who enjoys temporary life.
Okay.
That's Asura. So English, it's translated as demon. But when you look at the Christian understanding of the word demon, then it means someone with a trident and two horns on the head.
Yeah,
Looking.
That's what I'm asking, because in Quran, if God described demon is like with horns, with very scary face,
yeah,
it's like a snake or something. It's like a demon. That's why if you see a Vishnu sitting on the snake, lie on the snake, you think sometimes in our mind we were thinking that it's a demon or something like that.
So because their definition of the word is demon. For them, demons means satanic or an representative of Saturn.
Yes, yeah.
Right? But in Sanskrit, the word demon comes from the word asura, which means anyone enjoying material life also, actually. That's called demoniac tendency. So it is not as harsh word as it is seen in Abrahamic religions. In Abrahamic religions, demon means, oh, if you tell someone he's a demon, this is really, really bad. Right? But then in Sanskrit, when you say it's asura, it's just like, okay, you are not interested in material, spiritual life. It's called asura. Asura. Sura means to enjoy permanent life. Asura, enjoying temporary life.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you so much. It's very clear.
Bhakti Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, when we have the understanding about demigods, they are at the level of in the mode of goodness, and they have particular tasks assigned or some task assigned in the material world. So if they are at the level of goodness, then won't they be entering the spiritual world? Like, so why are they in the material world then, the demigods?
When
would they go to the spiritual world?
When it said that the demigods in mode of goodness, it means relatively. Not all the demigods are on equal level of goodness. You know, like for example, if someone is at a certain height, so that person is higher than those who are lower to that person, right? But that doesn't mean that person is at the highest level. That person is just higher than those who are lower. So when we say the demigods are in mode of goodness, it means, okay, compared to the human beings, they are more in goodness.
So won't they reach the spiritual world earlier or quicker then?
There's no point of reaching spiritual world by mode of goodness. Goodness is also one of the modes. No? We have already studied in 13th chapter. The mode of
won't
goodness
they transcend the mode of goodness?
Yes, only that person goes to spiritual. One who transcends the mode of goodness. Gunatita, going beyond the three modes. That person goes to spiritual world. Mode of goodness does not let you go to spiritual world. It helps you. It is like a transition point, but it's not the ultimate point. It cannot help us go back because it is a contamination. The one will stay. Like Brahmaji, Lord Brahma, he's made up of 100% sattva, complete mode of goodness. But then that doesn't qualify Brahma to go back to Godhead. Even Brahma has to engage in pure devotional service. Then Brahma will go back to God. Okay, Nihamat.
Prabhuji, my question is slightly off topic. Why is Vishnu Bhagavan lying on Ananta Shesha?
He can lie anywhere because everything is his. So he can lie anywhere. He can lie on Ananta Shesha. He can lie on anything else also. Now, why Ananta Shesha? Because Ananta Shesha is his devotee, and he wants to serve him by creating a bed for Lord Vishnu. So, where is the Lord lying? He's lying in the ocean. Now, if he's lying in the ocean, on whom should he lie upon? On an elephant?
No.
No, right? It has to be an animal living in the water, right? And then the body of the shape of the animal's body should also be so much big that you can lie on it, right? So Ananta Sesha is a huge snake which has big coils, so that Ananta Sesha makes the coils in such a way that it becomes a bed, and that Ananta Sesha is floating on the water. So the Lord lies on that Ananta Shesha. Now, why Ananta Shesha is like that? Because that's how he is serving the Supreme Lord. Ananta Shesha is not just acting as the bed of the Lord. Ananta Shesha is also holding every single universe on its hood. It has innumerable hoods. And every single universe is resting on the hood of the Ananta Shesha. So in that way, he supports all the universes by holding them in the place. And he also functions as the bed of the Supreme Lord. And the same Ananta Shesha, when the universe has to be destroyed, he emits fire from his mouth. And that fire acts as the destruction fire for the universe. So there are many roles for him to play. And who he is Balaramji. Balaramji expanded himself as Ananta Shesha to serve the Supreme Lord. So the Lord chose him, right? Krishna and his expansions, they can come in any form, any form. Why? Because all the forms are coming from him. Now, in our eyes, a particular form may be nasty or a particular form may be good.
Yes.
But if you look from spiritual perspective, all the forms are good. If you read the description of the beauty of Ananta Shesha, the beauty of Miss World or Mr. World will fail. That much how beautiful that snake is. But we have not seen a beautiful snake, so then we think, oh, how can God come in the form of a snake? Right? But that's a very beautiful snake. Very beautiful snake. All right, Srinivas Gopal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanvat Pranam Prabhu. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just want to know that when the soul leaves the body, it is always that somebody like devatas or the Yamadutas carry the soul, and also while giving birth, also what happens when the soul, how the soul comes into the body.
Your question is someone always carries the soul.
Hello?
I think I already answered that in chapter 8. The soul never goes alone from one place to another place. The soul is always accompanied by someone. So now who that someone will be depend on the destination where the soul is going. So it can be demigod, it can be Yamaduta, it can be anywhere the soul is going, always accompanied. Means the soul is transported. The soul doesn't move around by itself. Cannot move around by itself. It needs help. It needs help. Okay, so we have already discussed this before in chapter 8. Paramita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, it's not a question, it's a comment. I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam where it is mentioned that Ananta Shesha is like the air-conditioned bed. Like in summer, it keeps the bed cool, and in winter, it keeps the bed hot. It's in chapter 3.
Yes, so Ananta Shesha functions like that. For the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, he makes those arrangements in that form of the snake. So, all right, thank you so much, everyone. See you next week for chapter 16 of Bhagavad-gita, the divine and the demonian. Hare Krishna. Srila
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry for the last one. So, I think we have picked up a lot of speed. So when will the next module test be?
We still have a long time to go. Chapter 18 is very long.
I know it's a long one.
So we will have exam mostly in the first week of April.
April. Okay, great. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.